Hello, Assalamu alaikum, everybody. We're all safe, sound, and healthy. And today we are going to try to put together a whole summarized um, report, you can say, of the attack on Iran in chronological order. I'll try my best to keep in all the key points that I think are important for us to note as we move along. And then we'll see Pakistan's role in this whole thing and why I keep on saying that Pakistan is that biblical hypocrite. Obviously, I have covered each of these events as they occurred, you know, in true time when they occurred in my podcast, in my previous episodes. But now, what we're going to do is we are going to try to put everything together piece by piece in, again, in a summary and see where we've reached today. Okay? So here is the best that I have tried to put together. If I've missed anything and if I make any mistakes in pronouncing names, please do forgive me beforehand. Okay? So let's start from 2024 because actually the the attack on Iran, the actual first successful attack, you can say, the first breakthrough that the Americans and the Israelis had because they couldn't get hold of the superior leadership of Iran, sorry, of Iran for a very long time. And we know that it's because the Iranians were very tight in security. But this attack on 2024 was proof and evidence of the fact that the Israeli and American spies had managed to reach further in, enough to give them inside information, enough to get the weakness, enough to have them start assassinating or martyring important people who played key roles in keeping Iran safe, you can say, from the US aggression or from the Israeli aggression, right? So, this direct confrontation, which you would say, for the want of a better word, was in April 1st, 2024, when Israel bombed the Iranian consulate in Damascus, Syria. Yes. And 13 people died, including 7 members of the IRGC, most notably Mohammad Raza Zahedi. He was a senior Quds force commander. Okay. Then in April 13 to 14, 2 days, April 13 to 14th, 2024, the Operation True Promise began, or you can say it was launched, and this was launched by Iran, and it launched its first direct attack on Israel, firing over 300 drones and missiles. Then, April 19th, 2024, was the Isfahan strike. That is when Israel conducted a limited retaliatory strike near Isfahan, targeting an air defense radar guarding the Natanz nuclear facility. Remember, again, here, we will remember that Iran never did work on their nuclear their nuclear energy. They never worked on the nuclear bomb. They never worked on anything nuclear because Khomeini, the leader of Iran, the supreme leader of Iran, had already issued a fatwa against it, citing that its disadvantages were more than the advantages, and as per Islamic law, anything that is more harmful or can cause more damage should be avoided. So he was against the whole, the whole nuclear thing. And so actually this whole attack, the so-called attack or so-called target, of the nuclear facility, this in itself is very questionable. Now, July 31st, 2024, this is the Haniyeh assassination. And this is when Hamas political leader Ismail Haniyeh was assassinated in a military guest house in Tehran shortly after attending a presidential inauguration. Notice, this, as I said, is probably the first inkling that one had of the fact that, okay, insiders have reached further in enough for them to be able to target and assassinate in Tehran, and Hamas political leader, then October 1st, 2024, Operation True Promise 2. Notice how Iran seems to reply after at least 2 to 3 attacks are done. So there's no retaliatory response by Iran immediately, but Iran actually gives the barbarians, the Israeli and American barbarians, a chance every time for them to just back off. It's when they do not back off that Iran then retaliates. That shows extreme maturity as well. Again, remember, we are dealing with the two different parties that you're dealing with here are the mighty Iran that was a sovereign country right through millennia, not just centuries, but millennia. It was an empire. It is now a country, but through the ages, it was never invaded. It was never conquered. Even through the whole Islamic empire thing, it was amongst the top. And it is a country that has a vast, 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 uninterrupted history, a history of civilization, history of being one of the most developed countries in the world. And even now, despite the fact that it went through sanctions and everything, they persevered through it. And you can see that they are actually, in fact, still, if you ever went to Iran, you would know that they are still considered one of the most developed countries in the world. And if you look at their education, if you look at their infrastructure, if you look at their lifestyle, you would know that they are still way ahead of even Americans and especially of Israelis who really have no history whatsoever to boast of and nothing to their own name. Everything that the West has and everything that Israel has really is something that they have begged, borrowed, or stolen, nothing to their own name. But Iran is a whole civilization, it's a whole history on itself. So you see the difference, you see the maturity here, you see the difference here between the two parties. So October 1st, 2024, you have Operation True Promise 2, where Iran launched approximately 200 ballistic missiles at Israel in retaliation for the deaths of Haniyeh and Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah. Now, again, this is probably one of the biggest, nastiest surprises that the Americans and the Israelis had. They had no idea that Iran has the capacity to make about 100 missiles a day and drones. Whereas America, that considers itself supreme in military, and they cannot even produce as much in a year. So that was also one thing that was a huge setback for the Americans. Now, October 26, 2024, also remember, before I go ahead, remember that Trump was actually dizzy with his kidnapping of the Venezuelan president. He kidnapped the Venezuelan president and his wife, and he invaded Venezuela, and so he was drunk with that. I mean, what is Venezuela compared to Iran, to be very honest? Sorry to say that, but it is a fact. If he knew any better, he would have known that he didn't stand a chance against Iran. So, October 26, 2024, Operation Days of Repentance. The kind of names that the Israelis give, really, it just again shows their lack of civilization. Now, Israel conducted precision strikes against Iranian missile production and air defense sites, claimed that it destroyed nearly all of Iran's S-300 systems. And again, they got a very nasty surprise after that when Iran kept on sending missiles their way. In fact, truth is, Israel has blocked satellites and not allowed them to share images of whatever is going on in Israel. Just like how certain areas where the American bases are have been also blocked, and the satellite companies who record images of different countries all over the world, and then they share it, with the news outlets and everything for better information. They have been told to gatekeep Israel, and one or two parts where, again, Americans are concerned, because Israel actually has suffered a huge amount of destruction. So much so that when they managed to leak a little bit of the videos and images from the Middle East, you could see that the Israelis, the so called settlers that were brought in to, destroy the Palestinians and to take over their homes and occupy them and everything, those same settlers were now screaming blue murder at the airport, dying to get out and saying, we don't want to live here and we want our safety. And there's so much for your Israeli warriors, seriously. I've never seen a bunch of cowards in my entire life, to be very honest, especially when they come in claiming such tall claims. Just a noteworthy fact, okay? So, 2025 now. Now we enter 2025, okay? And remember, right now we're in 2026, so imagine 2025, the 12-day war. This was an intense escalation in the mid 2025, which reshaped the whole regional dynamics and included direct US participation, which, as I said, because Trump was drunk with his Venezuelan achievement. June 13 to 24, 2025, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion. More, they should have called it Rising Hyena, seriously. As I said, the way the Israelis are now, blocked, and the way they're trying to leave Israel, and the way the airports are closed and everything. Yeah, that was a fun video to watch. Okay, so they launched this operation against the Iranian military and nuclear facilities. Again, when Iran never developed their nuclear energy or their nuclear bomb or nuclear anything, what nuclear facilities? Well, we'll know that we already know now what it was. It was all about basically trying to steal their uranium reserves. But anyway, June 22, 2025, the United States joined the strikes utilizing bunker buster bombs on nuclear sites at Natanz and Fordow. Leadership killed in June 13 to 24. Now, June 13 to 24, a significant portion of the IRGC command was eliminated, including Muhammad Bagheri. He was the chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces. Then we had Hussein Salami, or Hussein Salami, the commander-in-chief of the IRGC. Then we had Amir Ali Hajizadeh. He was the commander of the IRGC Aerospace Force. Then nuclear scientists, multiple scientists, including Muhammad Mehdi Tehranji and Feridun Abbasi, were killed in their residences. Remember how even before the Israelis have the Mossad, they have had a history of killing Muslim scientists, especially. Even when they wanted to occupy Palestine, one of the things that they first did was target their scientists, their doctors, their basically what they always want to do, the Israelis and the Americans, but especially the Israelis, for the want of a better word for this band of mercenaries that we have. They have always targeted civilization. Notice this. They target infrastructures, they target civilization, they target people in the academics, they target people who make progress in their society. They think they're being very clever by doing that, but they're just showing you what they themselves are made of. Okay, 2026. This was the Operation Epic Fury. This was the attack now, the blatant attack on Iran, where they, on the one hand, the US was claiming to have nuclear negotiations with Iran. And as soon as they engaged Iran in the negotiations, they immediately backstabbed Iran by launching a massive offensive in early 2026. This was February 28, 2026, to be precise, when President Trump announced Operation Epic Fury, which was actually him backstabbing the Iranians. He called them to the negotiation table, they went there, and then he immediately turned around and he attacked them blind. These coordinated US-Israeli strikes targeted over 1,000 sites, focusing, they claim, on military infrastructure and government leadership, but they actually had already started strikes on civilian residential areas. The leadership that was killed at that point was obviously Ali Khamenei, who was the Iranian supreme leader. He was confirmed killed in a strike on his compound in Tehran. And let it also be noted that Ali Khamenei was already expecting this kind of a backstabbing. He was expecting his life to be ended, and he had already made a speech. It was a very worth listening to speech that he made to his people when he said that he knew that he didn't have long and that now he was old anyway and tired, and it was probably the right time for God to take him away, and that he had done his best that he could through the time, and that he hoped that he had fulfilled his duties. Then the school that was attacked on the first morning of that so called war, which, by the way, I don't even know why people are calling it a war. Let me tell you, by definition, a war is when two countries engage in a conflict. But here there was no conflict. The conflict was constantly one sided. Iran never engaged. America and Israel were the ones who constantly attacked Iran. Okay? So this is not a war, this is an attack. It's one sided. Now, the school that was attacked, on the very first morning of this attack, a missile struck the Shajarat Tayyiba Girls Primary School in Manab. The strike killed about 185 people, and most of them were schoolgirls aged 7 to 12. Let that sink in. 185 girls aged 7 to 12. They were killed by the Americans and the Israelis. And this was deliberate because the missile that was used was a precision missile. Understand that. Now, UNESCO heritage sites were also damaged. Let's go through them. You have the Gulistan Palace in Tehran, which sustained several structural damage, including shattered mirrorwork and tiles, which was again a deliberate attack. It was a deliberate target. Isfahan heritage, which again, attacks in Isfahan caused damage to historic landmarks, including the Naqsh-e-Jahan Square and Jame Mosque. Now, the oil refinery and infrastructure, we have the Karg Island. That was the primary oil export hub that was targeted. It contributed to a surge in global oil prices for over $100, as we know. Countries like Pakistan, who have nothing whatsoever to even do with that conflict or that attack, Pakistan immediately, the government, the illegal US planted government of Pakistan decided to make use of that, to take full advantage of that. And it immediately hiked the petrol prices of Pakistan, adding tax to it, raising it by 55, and now it has gone up to 75 rupees per unit. And now just imagine what it is that people are paying for in Pakistan when other countries are actually trying to keep their rates as low as they can. Major refineries were hit as part of a campaign to eliminate the IRGC's money machine. Now, we know that it's not about IRGC's money machine. Again, these are narratives, falsified narratives. The true story is that as Trump, if you remember, during those times when Israel was targeting these refineries, America's Trump, President Trump kept on and on saying, do not hit the refineries, do not hit the oil, because that is what we want. He said that very openly, and I'm quoting him here. Now, April 7th, 2026, a 2-week ceasefire brokered allegedly by Pakistan. Now, what exactly happened was that Pakistan was just the go-between. Okay, Pakistan did not broker any ceasefire. Pakistan was just the helpless messenger, which will come to the recent most brokering, and you will see how and why. So again, that 2-week ceasefire that they just allegedly brokered about 4 days ago did not, let's just put it this way. America, once again, backstabbed everyone and violated. First of all, this ceasefire that was supposed to have been brokered was brokered by China because Iran had expressed doubt, very rightly so, on Pakistan's efforts and the legitimacy behind it. And so Ishaq Dar was obliged to go to China, where he had to meet with China and sort of, convince them to enter into this whole brokering of this ceasefire. And then China obviously said that, you know what, because we're already pretty pissed off with you, being the biblical hypocrite and all, and what you've been doing, you didn't even clean, you didn't even sweep before your own door, and now you're acting as this hypocrite, and you've also caused us a lot of problems and stress. So why not you also think about giving us all that money that we loaned you till date? As you know, the same thing happened in the UAE when our prime minister went to the UAE thinking that he would go and sit and have a big hee haw. The UAE's royal family basically gave them a shut up call. By them, I mean our prime minister and Trump's beloved general Asim Munir. They were literally given a huge resounding smack by the UAE government, saying that, you know what, first of all, you just return the loan that we, and it's not like the UAE was giving us a loan interest free. No, as a Muslim country, the UAE was already going against Islam by loaning Pakistan based on a 6% interest, which is the highest rate of interest taken from any other country in the world, by the way. So Pakistan was obliged to return that money, but good for Pakistan anyway, because the UAE was actually pissed off with Pakistan, saying that you were so busy talking about Saudi and talking about your defense, deal with Saudi and everything. You did not even once talk about how we're the ones who are being attacked. Saudi is not the one being attacked. We're the ones being attacked. Yeah, well, you know what? Here's my 2 cents here. If the UAE did not go against the Muslim world and did not, sit as America's lapdog, allowing America to use its soil to kill innocent people in Iran, then Iran wouldn't be retaliating by hitting all the American bases in the UAE. In fact, the UAE should be very, very grateful, very, very thankful to Iran that the Iranians still exerted a lot of self-control and hit only and only American-related and American-concerned bases and offices and buildings, and that even they actually gave you warnings and told you to evacuate those places before they actually hit the missiles. So, yeah, you should be ashamed of yourself. So, as I said, this coming back to this 2 week ceasefire. So, Ishaq Dar went to China. China then said, okay. So, China came to the table. And once again, the Americans, yes, like they did in the previous 2 negotiations with Iran, they once again backstabbed Iran, because, as I said, the negotiations of ceasefire here were not just supposed to apply to Iran. It was supposed to apply to the Gulf region, the Middle East, and Lebanon. But Israel immediately announced that no, it was not going to follow through, and it will continue attacking Lebanon, which it did. And at the same time, America and Israel again just attacked the oil refinery that we, in the America and Israel just attacked the oil refinery yesterday that we know of in Iran, which was Levan Island. Okay, so the oil refinery that was attacked yesterday, as I said, because the ceasefire was repeatedly violated, as I already said. So on April 8th, 2026, the oil refinery on Levan Island was attacked, and the facilities on Siri Island were struck by explosions. So here we are. This is the Israelis and Americans repeatedly violating ceasefire. So where do we stand now? This is where we stand. Shahbaz Sharif's tweet is all the rage right now, because the latest tweet that he uploaded or posted on X, whoever posted it on his behalf, because obviously we know that these people don't do it themselves. There's always an assistant whose job it is to take care of your social media. That assistant's job is to make sure that that you're basically caught up with in the whole social media scenario. So obviously you do not personally take care of that. You have people doing that for you. So whoever this assistant was of Shahbaz Sharif, whoever is operating his X account, that person either deliberately or due to laziness, because we all know none of these people are qualified or even on merit. They're all those people who are Form 47, which means they're not at all qualified to have even the posts that they have. So it's probably one of those Form 47 people. So either out of sheer stupidity, laziness, and incompetence, or maybe deliberate, this person, when he uploaded the latest tweet of Shehbaz Sharif, he forgot. He actually forgot to remove the lines that say draft for the Pakistani PM, right? So if you look at Shehbaz Sharif's tweet, you would see that right on top, which everybody's highlighting, is draft Pakistan's PM message on X. And then beneath that, there is this whole tweet, diplomatic efforts for peaceful settlement of the ongoing war in the Middle East are progressing steadily, strongly, and powerfully, with the potential to lead to substantive results in the near future. To allow diplomacy to run its course, I earnestly request President Trump to extend the deadline for 2 weeks. Pakistan, in all sincerity, requests the Iranian brothers to open Strait of Hormuz for a corresponding period of 2 weeks as a goodwill gesture. We also urge all warring parties to observe a ceasefire everywhere for 2 weeks to allow diplomacy to achieve conclusive termination of war in the interest of the long-term peace and stability in the region. And he's tagged Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, Steve Witkoff, and 2 other people, right? Oh, and the peace missions. Sorry. Okay, so here we are. This was the tweet that then everybody started saying, "Oh, hey, hang on, this is so obviously a tweet that was written and sent to the Pakistani Prime Minister, like Forbes." Now, Forbes says Pakistan's plea to Trump draft of X post looks scripted by someone else. Well, obviously it doesn't look, it really is scripted by someone else. And then Mario Nofal says Trump already decided to delay his deadline. This is all on X, by the way. Trump already decided to delay his deadline. He just didn't want to look bad doing it for the 5th time. So he asked Pakistan to propose this delay. He already accepted Pakistan's proposal before Pakistan even knew about it. So there you are. I mean, it's obvious, isn't it? And then there's Praveen, sorry, I am a bit blind here. Okay, Praveen Sohni, okay. He says on X, my observations, number 1, Iran has won the war. Negotiations will be on Iran's 10 points framework for permanent peace. 2, Iran's terms will be accepted by Trump. Why? Will explain. 3, with this war, the hegemonic age is over. No followers, only partner nations. India will be the sole exception in the world. 4, Pakistan has emerged as more than a credible mediator, a geopolitical asset in the new world order. I will explain the above in my video to be online by today, Wednesday, April 8th evening. Now, this was probably before, this tweet was just before that faux pas came out, that gaffe of Shehbaz Sharif's tweet came out, where suddenly everybody was like, oh, hang on, this is it means President Trump, obviously, once again, because as we know, Trump was basically bluffing. He was exerting verbal pressure and just bluffing. But as I said before, people, even Trump's own people, are now going against him, saying, oh, he's clearly insane, he's demented, he's this, he's that. Okay, first of all, as I've repeatedly said, in my opinion, I'm sane or not, but Donald Trump, every word that he says is a coded message to his people who are manipulating stocks, who are doing insider trading, okay? So he's basically making money, okay? He's making money. And number 2, he is face saving. He's trying constantly to look for a way to save face, because his high, that he got on the Venezuelan, achievement, that high has now gone very, very low. He's in withdrawal, okay? Right now, he is in great withdrawal period, and he's thinking, oh my God, okay, he's literally fallen flat to the ground, realized that he did not do a good thing by entering into this whole occupation Iran operation, and that he's losing miserably and he doesn't know what to do. And one of the latest escapades that we know is the cover up, the massive cover up of where, just to save one pilot, he thought that by creating that narrative, he would be able to bounce back a little, especially with midterms coming. That, that the American policy that, we leave no one behind. Well, you do leave people behind, but okay, we leave no one behind. So keeping that narrative, that Hollywood narrative, that very badly written script, where, to go and save that one pilot, it's amazing how all those hours that they took, they managed to communicate with the pilot, and the Iranians over there couldn't find him, and then they managed to fight off some of the Iranians, and everything happened in all that span of what, 24 to 48 hours, and then so many of their own planes also get downed, and then they also rescue a pilot. Yeah, BS, total BS. As many people are even providing evidence to the fact that this was actually Operation Stealing Uranium. So basically, all those downed flights and jets were basically them trying to steal uranium reserves of Iran, which is actually, again, I remember, the whole Palestinian occupation is for, again, reserves and resources that they want to steal. The whole occupation in Gaza is basically land mafia development. The same thing as in Kashmir, occupied Kashmir in India. They're hoping to get all that land and then develop resorts and this and that. At the same time, also use the borders as they want to use Pakistani borders, to be able to control Russia and China. And then on the other side, Afghanistan, the reason why they want Bagram base is, again, so that they should be able to control Russia. Now, people, especially people like Dr. Shabazz Gill and all, they talk about how Imran Khan was always right, and he proved himself right, and America wasted 20 years in Afghanistan, only to find out that Imran Khan was right. Similarly, Imran Khan's prediction on the Iran war or any conflict with Iran was also right. You think they don't know that? See, that's one thing. People, when we talk about how, see, Imran Khan was right, and it took Americans 20 years to realize, no. The Americans knew. They already knew that Imran Khan was right. Their problem was, the reason why they stayed 20 years in Afghanistan was opium, number one. One of the most important, opium. Number two, rare earth minerals. They have been fracking the bejesus out of Afghanistan to steal, loot, and plunder rare earth minerals, which is also what they want from Balochistan, Pakistan, as you know, which they signed the MOU for. Their problem is they want resources and reserves from, and we are the countries that have them. And most of the countries that have them seem to be, one way or the other, Muslim countries in majority. Some that are non-Muslim countries like Venezuela and Cuba, and Mexico, and then, some of the Western African countries and all. They are there too. But on this side of the planet, it's majority Muslim countries. Okay. So then they sometimes turn it into a crusade, sometimes they turn it into a 9/11 charade, sometimes they turn anything and everything to somehow fit the narrative so that they should be allowed to attack these countries so that they can steal the resources. The same as with Iraq. It was basically looting and plundering Iraq. Then now they want to loot and plunder Iran. They want Iran's uranium and they want Iran's petroleum. Right? Pakistan, again, as we know, Pakistan is already under their control anyway, so they don't need to worry about Pakistan. Pakistan is already the 51st state of the United States of America right now, officially and unofficially. So, they're good. On this side, what they really want now, again, with Palestine, with Kashmir, with Afghanistan, with Iran is clear. Now, again, what opium in Afghanistan? The British and the Americans, they have funded and financed their covert operations and their intelligence outfits with drug trafficking. Okay? Their wars with other countries like China and with other, Afghanistan and all, has always been opium based. Okay, these countries resisted the British with their Canadian colony, their American colony. They then created problems for these countries. They invaded these countries, they killed their leadership, they did anything and everything they could. And obviously, now there's always propaganda. But the real truth is that the Taliban, when they took over Afghanistan, as per Islamic law, every single year they would burn down the opium fields. That, to the British and the Americans, meant burning down their bread and butter. This was their whole finance. How else were they going to finance all the illegal operations, all the covert operations that they've been doing all over the world, from genocide to terrorism to creating terrorist and funding out terrorist outfits to committing crimes and to again so there's a lot that they do all over the world, toppling governments, ousting governments, civil wars. They need lots and lots of money for that. And drug trading, drug trafficking is the highest paid business that they could have ever had, apart from child trafficking, by the way. Yes, they also do child pornography and child trafficking, but that is, so these are the two main sources. This is why they sat in Afghanistan for 20 years, despite the fact that they had nothing but loss, as in loss of lives, and loss of the American economy within. But the people involved, the warmongers and the government and the lobbyists and the entrepreneurs, so called, they're the ones who always end up at the winning end. They're the ones who end up earning all that money. They're the warmongers, you see. So that's the same story there. It's not like they didn't know. It's not like they didn't know. I mean, the thing is, the difference between them and Imran Khan, or people like Imran Khan, is people like Imran Khan, they're not greedy. They just want to take care of their own people, their own country. They want their own national interests to be served, and that's it. Okay, he's not part of the cabal. Those who are part of the cabal, they're the ones who are wreaking havoc all over the world. So you have the Israelis and the Americans, who have constantly reminded you are basically, again, colonies of the British. Whatever they're doing is at the behest, at the command of the British. The problem now, you're going to say, then why is it that the British refuse to take part in this war? Again, who says that the British hasn't taken part in this war? The British may have refused, but the British public themselves have caught their own government red-handed, sending warplanes and giving their bases. And it wasn't defensive. These are all offensive. They were caught with offensive agendas, not defensive agendas. And even now, this truce, this ceasefire, this violation was, again, using British airbase and using UAE and using using American and Israel and British, again, all three together. And yes, you would say that, oh, then why? Again, we don't know yet that Iran retaliated by attacking Kuwait, because if indeed Iran did attack Kuwait, that would mean that one of the missiles came from Kuwait, because Iran is only retaliating. It's not hitting randomly. Number two, it could also be another Saudi case, where, like how the Israelis hit Saudi and tried to claim that, and unsuccessfully claim that, no, it is Iran. So it maybe they did the same at Kuwait. You never know, because again, the Americans and the Israelis have, I mean, this is something we in this part of the world always knew, but I'm glad to say that now their own people are very painfully aware of the fact that the Americans and the Israelis are liars, that they have no integrity, that they have no trust value, that they do not honor their word, and that they're backstabbers. All the 3 to 4 negotiations, so-called negotiations, that they have been having with Iran for the past 2 to 3 years, were all violated by the Americans and the Israelis backstabbing during the negotiations, backstabbing the Iranians. Okay. And it is, I mean, the Trump has actually made it very clear 2 to 3 times when he tried to stop the Israelis from bombing the refineries, the oil refineries, is that we need the oil. That's what we're fighting for. What the hell are you people doing? He said it out loud and open. Sometimes he talks about regime change, then he says, oh, we are talking to the new regime now, they're the right people. Yet there is no new regime. It's still the same system, it's the same regime. you know and that is actually what the Americans and the Israelis very painfully learned, is that all these years, 20 to 30 years, Iran built its system in such a way that its system does not depend on a man. That is one of the most, you can say, one of the most organized systems in the world that you can see right now, that you can witness, where it doesn't matter who falls, the system will continue working. It was built to work. People are dispensable in the system, which means that even the most important of persons, like the supreme leader, could be killed and the system will not crash. And that is why, in their frustration and in their inferiority complex, they're constantly damaging the infrastructure, the educational institutions. They're killing the scientists, they're killing the academics, they're killing the doctors, they're trying to target hospitals, they have targeted pharmaceutical companies, they have targeted research and development centers that worked on cancer research. They have targeted any and everything that is important in a social structure, because they feel that if they target all the social structure, then at least finally the system will collapse. But the system still didn't collapse. As the Iranians said, I forgot the name, sorry, of the professor, but as he said, Iran will rebuild itself. But this reputation that the Americans have lost, they can never rebuild it. And it's true. As I said, thankfully, something that was known to all of us is now known to the Western world as well, to the public, the brainwashed public. Now it has been very painfully made aware to them now that their governments are the villains. They're not the heroes, they're not the good guys, they're the bad guys. They're the villains. As I've always said, America is the dawn of the mafia. But actually, the real dawn of the mafia, as I've also always said, are the British. The Americans and the Israelis are their henchmen. They do all the dirty deeds for them while they sit pretty and pretend, plausible deniability. The only reason why Britain, Italy, France were not ready to jump into this war is they were pissed off with Israel jumping the gun. They needed time to prepare because they knew that once the war started, they would have these same problems that they're having, which is the petroleum scenario, the oil and gas prices rising and everything. So they wanted to take care of this to lower the aftermath. And then they were supposed to pursue this attack on Iran sometime around June, July of this year. But as it is, the Americans and the Israelis, they did it way ahead of time, which is February of this year, which pissed them off because now obviously they weren't ready. They hadn't yet completed their preparation. So they're now being badly affected by it. And that's why they refused. But still, as I said, because this was actually inevitably going to happen, this was the plans of the British since the 1970s. So the British, even though, to appease the public, they're like, oh, no, we're not going to be part of the war. But as I said, they were caught red-handed by their own public that they are indeed part of the war. And why wouldn't they be? Because basically what the Americans were pissed off at the British for were like, it's at your command that we're doing this. This is your plan. You are the ones that planned this. Fine, the Israelis jumped the gun. They started way early. You didn't have time to prep. Big deal now. We're all in it. It was your plan. You've got to get in because you cannot get out. And if you get out, we'll expose you too. You're already half exposed anyway. And that was his coded message to the Europeans and the NATO allies, by the way. Now, here, look at Pakistan, the headless chicken, the helpless messenger, the hypocrite, the biblical hypocrite. Now, as I said, because this government was basically brought in by the Israelis and the Americans, they were planted into our country. Our legitimate government was ousted. So America, as I said, is all good. Israel and America are all good because they're like, oh yeah, Pakistan is finally 100% our colony. It's under our thumb, under our control. We're good there. We can relax now where Pakistan is concerned. And you can see why, because Azam Munir is running like a headless chicken to please them. He engaged in, again, we can't call it a war. He literally attacked Afghanistan so that he could get the Bagram base, because he knows that if he does not prove himself, not only will he be sidelined, he could be unceremoniously removed, and then obviously he's going to be killed. The hunting dog, remember, gets killed. So here we are. He is in that situation where he has to do anything and everything to, and as I said, I'm sorry to say this, but that is again where your socioeconomic status, your background, where it shows, because he comes from a very, very poor background. So he would do anything and everything to get out of his inferiority complex, like the Sharif family and the Zardari family. They would do anything and everything to stay on the top, to be part of the elite. I mean, he got married into an elite Shia family and then decided that he decided to become a fake Shia. At one point, you're saying he's a Hafiz Quran. On the other side, he calls himself a Shia, and Shias are not Hafiz Quran. And then on the other side, you go and you see that now he called in all the Shia ulamas, the Shia scholars, the religious leaders, and said that, oh, if you're so sympathetic towards Iran, why don't you leave Pakistan and go and settle in Iran? He tried to create a rift, but the Shia scholars in Pakistan even are actually very, very aware, and they're very wise, you can say. So they knew that he was trying to steer a Muridke conflict where he egged on a religious group to protest against Israel, on Palestine. And then he mass murdered, he literally slaughtered them all in Muridke. So he thought that, oh, I'm very good at slaughtering people. After all, I slaughtered civilians in Lahore, then I slaughtered them at a massive scale in Islamabad, and then I slaughtered my own people that I egged on to create this protest, Palestinian protest. I've slaughtered them in Muridke. I'm very good at slaughtering people. Now I'm going to push the Shias, and then I'm going to slaughter them. But the Shias were too clever for that. They didn't fall for that trap. Good for them. As it is, he had already slaughtered civilians that protested against the American attack on Iran in Karachi as well as in Gilgit-Baltistan, as you know. And he even arrested and killed teenagers in Gilgit-Baltistan. So here we are. This is where Pakistan stands, okay, in the whole scenario. And so while these negotiations, these so-called negotiations were going on, what was Pakistan doing domestically on the domestic front? Because Pakistan felt that, this negotiation can fall through any time, because Iran had rejected the Americans' points, and Iran had brought in its own 10 points, which the Americans were obviously obliged to accept, theoretically, on paper during the negotiations. So Pakistan felt that, the hunting dog basically felt that, things can go wrong and they will definitely continue with the war. And he knows Israel well. So yes, I can understand. So he's like, we're still going to go to war. And obviously, if we go to war, we have to be on America's side and we will have to fight against Iran. So he decided, he was being again very over efficient, and he decided to have a whole news marathon against Iran, yesterday, day before, throughout, he had this whole anti Iran news marathon. Not to mention that just a few days before that, even, just when the negotiations were announced that they would begin, um, the Pakistani government ordered the local media, the mainstream media, to retire any and all Iranian origin journalists and employees. And so there was a prominent journalist who had his own show on one of the channels, and he mentioned this, that as of today all my shows are cancelled, and I have been requested to leave the channel because directions are given from the government that any and all people of Iranian descent should not be allowed to work anymore in the media, and they should be removed. I think it is very nice of him to still thank everybody, for having him. If anything, he should have used that against Pakistan. He should have, to show to the world what Pakistan really is doing on the inside. But anyway, the rest of the Pakistanis did it for him. We exposed our own government, or army, or whatever BS you like to call these a-holes. So here we are. So that wasn't enough. So now they decided, in their panic mode, in their over efficient mode, they decided, oh, let's run an anti Iran marathon. Let's claim that Iran attacked Saudi. And Iran did not attack Saudi, first of all. And wherever it did attack is like the other end of Saudi, nowhere near Makkah Medina in any way. And so with that, talk about false news again. And then they were like, oh, because we have a defense pact with Saudi, so if Iran dares to attack Saudi, we will be obliged to retaliate and blah, 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 And then suddenly an announcement comes that, oh, there's a truce. The negotiations have been successful. But obviously, knowing America and Israel to be who and what they are, they have already violated the ceasefire. So this is where we all stand, folks, today. I hope I have managed to summarize everything as easily, as quickly, as simply, actually, as I could, as possible. And still, 52 minutes have passed. So this is where I say, Khuda Hafiz. This is me signing out. Khuda Hafiz.